My name's Athena, I met you briefly, and today I'm going to be teaching you all how to solder. Oh, God damn it. So, what is soldering? Soldering is the process of getting two components, normally a PCB board and a small fiddly component, and fusing them together by melting metal and bonding them together. The form you're going to be doing today is through-hole soldering, where components sit in drilled holes, and you fill the gap with molten solder, bonding it basically forever. Other forms include using paste, which is far more fiddly, or using giant vats of liquid solder. Next slide. So the PCB board, or these components you're using today, they've already had holes drilled, and they're coated in either gold or copper, and you basically get this solder to form a bridge between the two. You slot the components in, and then you melt. I'm repeating myself. Next slide. So, we've got some very important steps you'll have to follow, so just pay attention to these, else something will go wrong. So first of all, you've got to check the workbench for hazards, just anything you can trip over, no water bottles and no open cords, safety glasses at all times unless you're using the microscope or you have your own glasses. Soldering tips should be on there, but if it falls off, let one of us know, we can put it back on. Once again, we can turn on the soldering iron, but always be aware of what temperature it's at and if it's on or off, because you don't want to think that it's off and touch it and suddenly instantly burn yourself. Yeah, make sure your PCB is all ready and safe and you have all your components. You turn on the exhaust fan, that's important. We don't want you breathing in gaseous metal and molten plastic. So in actual soldering, you touch the tip of the soldering iron to the material you want to melt, not the solder. You wait for it to heat up, and then you apply the solder into the heated up pads. I'll probably demonstrate that later. You allow it to run and cool, you remove your iron, and you continue soldering. Once you are done, you tin the iron with solder, return to the stand, and turn off power. Then you can leave the station, once it's actually safe for people. So this is a good handy little diagram. So you don't actually touch the solder with the iron. What you do is you touch both the component lead and the gold pad. You heat those up, and then you add the solder. It will basically, once it's hot enough, it will just instantly melt on contact with the pad. You heat it until it forms that nice little cone shape, and then you take the solder away. So, a few tips and tricks. First of all, don't panic. If you make a mistake, if you add way too much solder and it all kind of gets a big blob, we can fix that easily. Much prefer taking 5 minutes to fix it than for you to panic and ruin a component. You are holding a solder at 350 degrees Celsius. Always keep your fingers on the insulated part and be wary of where you're pointing the soldering iron. If you're not paying attention to where your iron is pointing, you may lose soldering privileges. This tool can burn you instantly. If you do get burned, that's okay. Just place the soldering iron back in its holder, raise your hand, and we'll come and help you. Don't try and melt the solder with a soldering iron. That just leads to frustration and sadness. Always heat the pad. Speaking of, the pads get very, very hot, like surprisingly hot, meaning that even after the soldering iron's away, the whole PCB board can still burn you for a while. So just be careful of that. And the PCB board is coated in plastic. It will burn. So don't leave your soldering iron on that, else you get a whole bunch of very nasty smelling smoke. Right, well, let's get to it then. So what we're going to do is have you come up in groups of 2, I think.
Groups of 2 with your proto boards and your header pins.
Yeah.
You can get those out of your bag.
We'll do soldering there, and everyone else just keep working on the work you had from yesterday.